will be on our focus tonight will be on running a Seder, leading a Seder, whatever kind of teaching or studying or leading you're doing in the lead up to the Seder. That'll be our focus tonight. And just a little Zoom etiquette, please keep yourself muted and please do use the chat as much as you'd like. You can put in questions, you can put in comments. We'll be pausing for questions throughout, and we're really excited to hear your voices. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Lauren Berman, to introduce himself.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, my name is Lauren Berman. I am Sefaria's Outreach and Engagement Associate, and I love working with people like you. I love working with people at Sefaria, but people outside of Sefaria too, to figure out what kind of Torah you're learning, what kind of Torah you're teaching, and how Sefaria can be a great home for all of that. And thank you all for being here. I love Pesach, I love Passover and leading Seders, and looking forward to seeing how Sefaria can help enhance our Seders as well. So before getting started with our very intimate group here, want you to actually use the chat for just a second and answer the following question. What is your favorite part of the Seder, or which part are you most curious about? So in the chat, you can answer what is your favorite part of the Seder, or which part are you most curious about?
Can you drop the window shades at your leisure? At your leisure.
Sounds like maybe not everyone is muted yet. We'll try to work on that. But if everyone can mute, and we'd love to hear your answers in the chat, and a few more people are joining. So we'll give you another 30 seconds to answer in the chat. Again, the question is, what's your favorite part of the Seder? Or what are you most curious to study this year or learn more about? And the question's in the chat as well. So we already have favorite, the singing. I'll be curious to know which song specifically. Going around the table and taking turns reading is another favorite. Hallel is a favorite. I think I'm curious about that answer because I feel like for me, Hallel sometimes drags a little bit at my Seder. So I want to know more about that at some point. Alana wants new ideas. Magid is a suggestion. Anyone else have any other favorites? I think I want to nominate the 4 questions as my favorite for this year. Although I also have a soft spot for Korach. Korach, the sandwich, the Hillel sandwich. That is I think an underappreciated part of the Seder. Okay, so keep those answers coming. We're going to talk tonight about Sefaria and about Seder. And we believe at Sefaria that our mission is to help people transmit the story of Torah to the next generation in the most compelling way possible. And of course, that's also a big part of what the Seder is about, is transmitting a story, telling a story, doing it in a really compelling and fun way. Oh, I see that someone else nominated asking questions as a favorite part. So that's great. And to do that, we're going to show you a little bit about how Sefaria can help you prepare for the Seder. So we want to show you, make sure you know about all of Sefaria's amazing Seder resources, including, but not limited to, the Haggadah, the Book of the Night, and all of its associated texts, but also some things beyond that. And we want to also focus on learning outside of the Haggadah, resources that aren't directly connected to the Haggadah itself, but that could still be useful in your Seder prep. And then towards the end, we'll look at some Seder activities that draw on Sefaria. And hopefully, I think it was Alana who said she's looking for some new ideas. Hopefully we'll give you some new ideas about what you might do at or in the lead up to the Seder with your families or communities or friends this year. Lauren just shared a sheet in the chat. So hopefully you can all see that link. And I am going to share my screen and we will take a look. And again, please feel free to chat any questions or comments that you have. We'll be pausing periodically to take those. So let's start outside the Haggadah, because by my count, we still have almost 2 weeks. I'm gonna call it almost 2 weeks till Passover starts, and I'm going to need every one of those days. So let's assume you're starting here and now with your Passover prep, and you're starting to think about what you're going to do at your Seder. So we'll start from an outside the Haggadah perspective. We'll start with the accompanying texts, other things that you might research to get ready for your Seder. You might know if you use Sefaria, but you might not have explored it, that Sefaria has a search feature, which will take you to topics pages. And I actually think I'm going to open a separate Sefaria tab so that you can see what this looks like in practice. Every Sefaria screen that you go to has this search bar in the upper right-hand corner, and you can type anything, but we'll focus on some Passover related topics. So for example, if I type in the word freedom, you can see that the first option is hashtag freedom, and that gives me the topics page for freedom. So it tells me that this is a value. It will give me related topics, and this first screen that you see is top texts that are associated with freedom. You can think of each one of these as an invitation to study something and to consider whether you might want to bring it into the discussion, again, either prior to your Seder or at your Seder itself. And if none of these primary texts is speaking to you, or if you want to know what do people do with these primary texts, you can click to this other tab where it says Sheets. And sheets are user-generated content that other people have produced on Sefaria. So for example, you might want to know about the holiday of freedom, 3 requirements of freedom, from servitude to servitude, Dayenu, when is enough freedom? Great question. All of these resources are on Sefaria, produced by other Sefaria community members, just like you. Some are rabbis, some are educators, some are students, all are learners. And you can click to open up any one of these sheets, and you can see, is this something that I'd like to use? And it might be the sources that are on the sheet, but it might also be the questions or the narrative. So for example, this sheet opens with a question. What does Pesach mean to you? Why do you celebrate Passover? And what theological significance does it have for you? How do you celebrate? These are questions that you could use as jumping off points at your Seder, coupled with resources that, again, you might want to incorporate, even though most of these texts are not in the Haggadah itself, but you might decide to kind of include them in this night's celebration. So the sheet that Lauren put in the chat has examples of other searches and other topics pages. So for example, there's a topics page for matzah, and you could look at all different sources on matzah. You can filter search results. So hopefully you can see, and it's not too tiny on my screen, but there's a button that says filter. You can click on that and sort them by relevance or chronologically. And you can also search within the topics page. So if you specifically want, for example, just quotes from the book of Exodus, you can find references to matzah in the book of Exodus by typing in Exodus there. So those are all great search options. And again, they'll help you discover the sources that specifically speak to your questions. I think somebody mentioned questions as the thing that they get most excited about at the Seder. So start with your questions, start with the curiosity that you think that the people around you might have. And these are some obvious ones or some straightforward ones, but it might be that there's something else entirely that you want to pursue. You might want to pursue a character like Miriam. So when you type in Miriam, you'll get hashtag Miriam. And I think that's a good example because she's not a character who is highlighted in the Seder, but she might be somebody whose character you want to bring into that space. And so doing that search can be a way to find the resources, find the texts, find the sheets that you want to be able to quote at your Seder. And we'll talk in a little bit about how you might then grab those sources and bring them in actually to your Seder. But first, I want to pause for any questions. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat. And Lauren, did any questions come in on the chat? No, none yet.
Not yet.
Great. Anything we should add to this conversation about search before we move on? Or does anybody have any questions? No. Okay, great. So now you've searched and you've found hopefully some great resources that you're loving for using for your Seder. The next step, the next piece is to think about what do you want to do with those sources. Sefaria has been collecting all different kinds of sources into what we call collections for a number of years now. Collections are just that. They're collections of sheets. So they're collections of user-generated content, or in some cases, content that the learning department has put together. And I'm really excited to show you some of these, some of which are new this year. Here's one that's new this year. It's called The Fours of Passover. Did you ever notice that there's a lot of fours in the Haggadah? It's a lot of counting, actually, in the Haggadah writ large, maybe more math than we're used to in the average Jewish ceremony. And I'm excited about this theme of four. So the story of the four questions, the story of the four cups, four reasons, maybe this is not new this year, actually, 2021. Okay, the four reasons for the four cups, their purpose and number, all different fours that you can explore in the Seder. This can be a great thing to do with either kids or adults, to prompt people from the beginning to notice, where do you find the number four in the Seder? And to sort of plan pauses along the way to stop and examine why four in each particular case. So each one of these titles is a source sheet. So for example, 4 reasons for 4 cups, Lauren. Let's look at your sheet. Who knows 4, and what 4s do you know about in Judaism? So you can check out not just 4s in the Seder, but 4 as a significant number in Judaism more generally. And again, every sheet that's on Sefaria, just like every text that's on Sefaria, it's there for you. It's there for you to use and reuse. So you can use this sheet as it is, or you can make a copy of this sheet and adapt it, and have it exist for your own purposes. You don't have to stick with it as it's written here, but we really want everyone to feel comfortable using these sources in the way that's going to work best for your particular Seder, your particular audience. Another really great collection, let's see, we have Paths to Freedom, a mystical Passover companion. If you didn't learn this, if you didn't read this over when we put it out last year, excuse me, I highly recommend it. It's just a great collection of, for me, I would say, I think it was Alana who said looking for new material for this year. For me, this was that new material, because these were perspectives on Passover that I hadn't previously considered. So these are mystical sources, and you can click into them and take a look and see what interests you. And again, what you might grab from each of these resources for your own Seder. And last but not least, I'll just mention that, again, anyone can make their own sheet and anyone can make their own collection. And you might want to think about what's the collection that would be most meaningful for your family or your community or your students for your own Seder. So here's an example of one that was created by a colleague of ours, let's see, a couple of years ago already, although it looks like she's been adding to it over time. And as you can see from the description, this was our colleague Annie's collection that she created for her eldest child when he had just turned 4. And she was thinking about how to create the perfect Seder for him. And she has another child now, and she's been adding to it over time. Both material that she's created, but also the important thing to realize about a collection is you can grab sheets from anywhere on Sefaria. So you don't have to have created the sheet. You can add it to your own collection. And maybe we'll show a little bit how to do that if there's time. And so you can, but I think we put general help on the sheet. So you'll be able to see how to do that. And you can add it to your collection, and it can be something that you use for this year and something that you look back to in future years, and again, kind of accrue material over time. Okay, I'm pausing again for any questions or comments. Lauren, did anything come in? No. Okay. And oh, you just added the sheet again to the chat. Okay, great. So again, I'll mention that on the sheet that Lauren shared, which I'm going back to, you can see that we have all these different collections, and we'll talk a little bit later on about how you might want to grab these resources for yourself, but I'll let you check out the other collections on your own, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Lauren, to continue.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. That was all very exciting. Sarah's just been showing us a lot about sort of looking outside the Haggadah, outside of our Haggadah. Now we're going to go inside the Haggadah and see what we can do inside the Haggadah to help enhance our Seders. So let's start with navigating the Haggadah. So I want to show you this. This is actually one of my favorite. It's a very subtle feature of Sefaria, but people at Sefaria know I like to talk about it a lot. It's actually the table of contents. So if you look here, I go to Haggadah, right? Whenever there's a book here, that means it's going to take me into the book, as opposed to the hashtag, which will take me to the topics page, which is what Sarah was just looking at. Now I want to go into the book. So I'm going to click Haggadah. It's going to take me here. Now this is one version of the table of contents, but let's say we are in Karpas. When I was growing up, I would just have literally bowls and bowls and bowls of parsley that I would eat with tons of salt water. It was always a good time. So want to see a couple of things. First of all, if you look on the side here, and this is, by the way, for any text in Sefaria, you're always going to see these three things at the top, right? There's about this text. In our case, maybe there's a question. What is the Haggadah? Or when was the Haggadah created? I don't know what the answer is going to be here, but if you click about this text, you're going to see a little bit about the Haggadah here. And interesting, composed Guadalajara, Spain. That is news to me. Also, Guadalajara is in Spain. Okay, I'm learning something new every day. This is really the holiday of answers and questions. But what I want to show you is table of contents. And again, this is for any book on Sefaria. If I click table of contents, you're going to see here all the things that we saw before: Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, etc. So I can, with a click of a button, click of the mouse, just jump around the whole entire Haggadah like that. Right. So maybe I got lost, or let's say maybe I'm either doing research beforehand, or I happen to be using Sefaria during the Seder itself. And maybe I dozed off at Urchatz. Now already we're at Shulchan Orech. I can just go into the table of contents and click Shulchan Orech, and here we are. So using the table of contents, you can actually navigate around the Haggadah very, very easily. No flips of pages, just clicks of a mouse. Also translations. And again, this is the same across the board for all texts in Sefaria. In this particular case, we have 6 different translations. Now, let's see, I'm actually not even sure. Oh, so interesting. This is very interesting already. The Luntz 1901 first Haggadah printed by a blind printer. That's very interesting. But what I want to draw our attention to is, so right now we are in the Sefaria edition of the Haggadah, and you can see here, let's go to Magid here. Actually, no, let's go to Nir Tzah, right? And we're just going to use the table of contents to go to one of the songs. So let's go to, let's see, Chad Gadya. We'll go to Chad Gadya. I'm going to click Chad Gadya, right? And we see Chad Gadya right in the Aramaic, in the Hebrew script, right? One kid that my father bought for 2 zuz, one kid. Now, I don't know if you know this. We actually just learned this, like as a team, we actually have a transliterated Haggadah. So I can go into translations and I can see that there's a transliterated version. Let's look right here. Here, the Yitzchak ben Gedalia Halevi Memorial Haggadah transliteration. I'm going to click transliteration or select translation. And now I see here, Chad Gadya, Dezabin Abba, Bitre Zuze, Chad Gadya. So, and this is throughout the whole entire Haggadah. So if you need a transliteration, or you want a transliteration, especially for the songs, but in general for the brachot or whatever it is, you should know that not only can you, with a click of a button, see it in English, right? So here you go. Who knows one? I know one. This is Echad Mi Yodea. But also you have the transliteration as well. All you have to do is go in the resource panel, translations, right? Right now we are in the English, this version, Sefaria, right? I can go to the transliterated one, click it, and here it is. Happens to actually be on the sidebar here, which is interesting how that happened. So that's something I want to show you. First of all, is a table of contents that you can jump around from part to part in the Haggadah, and you can use translations to see both the English and the transliteration. Okay. Interpreting. Oh, I see there's a chat here. It was Lauren's discovery. Oh, thank you. I just noticing that now. Another thing I wanted to point you out. So that was navigating, right? We're navigating through the Haggadah. Now let's talk about interpreting. And we are really indebted to a rabbi named Rabbi Mark Greenspan. And if you look at most parts of the Haggadah, so let's go to the table of contents. Let's just go to maybe we'll go to the 4 children, right? Here we are. Again, how do we get here? We went to the resource panel, table of contents. I'm going to look for the 4 children, 4 sons. I click it. Here we are. Now, I'm going to go into Chacham Mahu Omer. What does the wise one say? Chacham, assuming that means wise. So in the commentary here, like on all texts in Sefaria, we have commentary. And you'll notice that there's an EN here. And for many texts in Sefaria, you'll see an EN, but not all. The EN means that within this category will be at least one English text. In this case, we have many English texts. So I'm going to click commentary. And notice there are a lot of ENs. These are all different different commentaries on the Haggadah. As you can imagine, there are many. And these are all in English. So I'm just going to click the Marbeh L'Saper, which literally means to say a lot, to tell a lot. I'm going to click it. And then I have this whole entire commentary here on the wise child. So, and this, if we want to know who wrote this or who translated this, I could click open, have them side by side. I'll click the text again and go about this text. And it will tell me, first of all, about this commentary, the Marbeh L'Saper. But also it'll tell me who translated it. Current translation, Rabbi Mark Greenspan, OceansideJewishCenter.org. So we have many commentaries that are all written in, that are all translated into English. So that's something to know about, whether you're doing it, whether you're preparing or you're trying to sort of study the Haggadah while you're actually doing the Seder. Maybe you want to know, well, what's so evil about this evil child, so-called Rasha, the wicked child? Maybe everyone has a different commentary that they're going to choose, right? I'll choose this one. Beth will choose this one. Sarah will choose this one. Susan will choose this one, etc. And just to know that we have many commentaries, and they are all in English. Many of them are in English and in Hebrew too. Something else that you might want to think about is the fact that the Haggadah is really a commentary in a lot of ways, and it cites many different verses, and it tells stories that are actually in the Torah itself. So the four children, for example, all cite different verses from Exodus, from Deuteronomy, and elsewhere, possibly Ezekiel, maybe. So if I click Exodus 12:26, for example, right? And when your children ask you, what do you mean by this right? Or in Hebrew, Maha avodah hazot lachem. And for those who know the Hebrew, that's actually the wicked child's question. So as an individual, as a group, we can actually look at the original verses that the four children that discuss the four children in the Torah itself. So from the Haggadah, we have verses that are quoted. We can go from there back into the Tanakh, back into our Holy Bible to study those texts in context. And then maybe we'll understand what it is that the Haggadah is doing. What's the interpretation that the Haggadah is adding? So that's about navigating, table of contents, translations, transliterations, interpretations. We just saw a bunch of English commentaries, and we're seeing now how the Haggadah itself is a commentary. And before going to taking note of, we should know that there are a lot of images. There are images in the Haggadah. If you've ever seen the Megillat Esther, the scroll of Esther, a lot of images. Haggadah as well has many images. So for example, something that's very new here at Sefaria, if you go to the four children, right? So we're just here with the four children. Again, what does the wise one say? If you go to the bottom here, manuscripts, right here, manuscripts. And by the way, we have manuscripts for Tanakh. We have manuscripts for Talmud. We have lots of different manuscripts. Esther as well. Here we have 60 images. These are images, depictions of the four children throughout history. So if you've ever used Rabbi Sion's, I believe it's Rabbi Sion's, it's one of my favorite Haggadahs. I can't remember what it's called right now. It's escaping me. But there are many pictures of the four children. Here's on Sefaria as well. If I click manuscripts, then I can see here from the year 1300, right? All these different images, and there's so many. It's almost like, how do we even choose? And I believe it's in order. I think it's chronological order. Some of these might look familiar, but let's see. Let's just see if any of them look familiar to me, at least from my year celebrating the holiday. Could just kind of zoom in here. But as you can see, there are many of them from Italy, Amsterdam. If I click it, now we have the whole image right here. So this is this particular depiction of the four children. I wonder which one's which. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure which is which here. But so as you can see, there are many images all the way from the 1300s until the Shik Haggadah, Lodz, 1934. If I click this one, here we are. This one maybe looks more familiar for some of us. But as you can see, we have the four children. You can go to any of the sections of text in the four children, go into manuscripts, and you will see all these pictures of the four children. You could make a copy of it, put it into a source sheet. You could print it out. You could learn it, in real time, whatever it is you like to do. There are many images, choices of images. And then one other image is Tzion Ozeri's Haggadah, Pictures Tell, co-edited, I believe, by Sarah Walkenfeld, Sefaria's Chief Learning Officer. There are different parts of the Haggadah here. I'm just going to click, for example, someone said they like Hallel. I'll click Hallel, the Passover Haggadah, Hallel in nature. Here we go. So this is a picture, an image, a photograph that Tzion Ozeri, is a great photographer, took. And his interpretation, I guess, of Hallel or of nature. And there's a text related to from the Haggadah here, from right, but Say Yisrael Mitzrayim, when the Israel went out from Egypt, right? And then there's a discussion questions for further reflection, right? And this will all be, and then tell your own story, of course, the most important part. And this will all be in this sheet as well. So we went through navigating, interpreting, images. Finally, then I'll turn it over back to Sarah. We have taking notes, taking note of. So this is the case for all texts in the Haggadah, or all texts in Sefaria. That you can actually bookmark. You can bookmark texts. I don't know if people know that, but if you notice here, there's a little ribbon. There's a little ribbon right here. And again, this is the case for all texts in Sefaria's library. The Haggadah is no exception. If I really like this, let's go to this one here. Blessed be the place of all. Blessed be he, blessed be the one, etc. This is the introduction to the four children. I'll click the bookmark. If I really like this text or I want to look at it later, I'll click the bookmark. And then magically, I'm going to go to my other bookmarks here. I'm going to click it. And then I see here, right here, the four children, the four sons, one, right? Blessed be the place of all, right? So in this case, I didn't create a new source sheet. I just bookmarked this one particular text and I like it. So that's bookmarking. Another thing you could do is you create a source sheet. Include that text and then add your own commentaries on that particular sheet. And then lastly, you can add notes. It's a notes feature. It's very cool. So if I really like this text here, Baruch HaMakom, blessed be the place of all, blessed be God, then I could click notes. And this is, again, the case for all texts on Sefaria. Notes, I can say, remember to ask, Cousin Joey about this text at the Seder. Because Cousin Joey had a great interpretation, I remember. So I click add note. And then it's here. So whenever I'm in my notes, I'll see here, notes 1. That means I have a note associated with this text. I could also go to my profile, go to notes, and then I'll see here, Pesach Haggadah, the four sons, remember to ask Cousin Joey about this text at the Seder. So those are a few applications of how we could enliven our Seder from within the Haggadah. We could jump from place to place. We could use transliterations. We could use commentaries, both visual commentaries and textual commentaries, and we could take note of certain texts that really stand out to us, or maybe a grandson or a grandchild or a grandparent said something that really interested us and we want to make a note of it, we can do that too. So let me pause there, take some questions, thoughts before turning it back over to Sarah.
Nothing in the chat, but I'm happy to hear if anybody wants to raise a hand and ask a question, or if anyone wants to put something in the chat. We'll also have a little time for questions at the end.
Will you be able to demonstrate how to import things from outside of Sefaria and then how to put the whole thing together and into a printable PDF or a printable something?
I'm happy to speak to that. I think maybe in the next section, I'll speak to it when I talk about activities.
Thanks.
Or we're going to do that at the end. No. Okay. I'll just point out, I'm happy. Thank you for the question. I'm happy to speak a little bit to that. We have some tutorials. Maybe we'll drop some of those in the chat that will show you in a fuller sense, because it's kind of its own webinar. I'll just say, maybe by way of introducing the activities and by way of transitioning to that question as well, that everything that I showed you in presenting about things outside the Haggadah, and everything that Lauren showed you up until the taking note of section, you can do on Sefaria, whether it's your first time on the site, whether it's your 10th time on the site, whether or not you have an account on the site. And I'll also tell you that just experientially, we work with schools and synagogues all over the country, and actually in other countries also. And the youngest children that we know of who navigate Sefaria with some independence are generally in about 3rd grade. So from a very young age, children who can read any of the languages that we use, so basically either Hebrew or English, can navigate through Sefaria and can click through. And I think that's worth thinking about in your prep, but it's also worth noting that all the take note of features, so bookmarking, adding things to sheets, adding notes to text, for all of that, you do need an account and you will need to sign in. And maybe I'll show that. I'll share my screen again. Let's see. So I'm signed into my account on Sefaria, and you can tell because I have this tiny little person icon up there in the corner. And if I were not signed into Sefaria, then you would see sign up or log in as options. And so it's worth noting that you will need an account to do those things. We encourage you to create an account so that you can do all of these fun things on Sefaria. So maybe I'll speak a little bit to some of the activities, which is my favorite part. And then speak to your question about what I think I'm understanding is like the activity of how do I create my own resources in advance of the Seder. So I'm usually the person who's tasked with creating Seder activities. And I'm so glad that I don't have to do it by myself anymore because Sefaria has so many great activities, some of which I plan to use at my Seder this year. So our learning department has been creating materials and collecting materials on Sefaria for a number of years now. And again, these are all activities or collections of activities that you can use. So we're back to the number 4 here. Who knows 4 cups of wine, 4 questions, and 4 children. And each one of these are really designed for somebody who's leading a Seder that involves children. And each one of these gives you the opportunity to think through one of the 4s. So for example, this one is about the 4 cups. It introduces the idea that we have 4 cups.
Ну я уже отключила тебя вообще. Я тебя на фургон одеваю.
We're going to have to mute people, which is maybe a little bit different than, a child who sees, let's say, the occasional Friday night dinner or Friday night dinner every week might be familiar with the idea of kiddush, but the Seder has 4 cups of wine or grape juice. And so this sheet speaks a little bit to why that is, explains the idea that there are 4 ways of speaking about redemption, and then has a collection includes additional outside sources that you can bring in to enrich the conversation, and then has some family discussion questions. So this includes questions that would be appropriate or could be adapted slightly for kids really of all ages. Of course, we know that part of the point of the Seder is to involve everybody in the conversation. My own children range in age from not yet 5 to not yet 16. And so I'm looking forward to using some of these questions at the Seder this year to ensure lively conversation that everyone can participate in. So that's one of our activities collections. I also want to draw your attention to Seder on Sefaria, which is a collection of really just all different kinds of activities for all different ages. And some of these are usable during the Seder, and some of them are maybe ones that you would like to use before the Seder. This is my absolute favorite one, designed by an educator named Olivia Friedman. And she encourages and really gives you instructions for how to print your own Seder t-shirts, like pick your favorite artwork or motto from the Seder and print your own t-shirt. Or you can just create a design even if you don't actually print it. But I think someday I would like to be organized far enough before Passover to actually print family t-shirts for the Seder. I think that'd be so fun. So these are all different, again, great fun activities. And again, each one of these is adaptable. Each one of these is something that you can use in your own way. It doesn't have to be exactly right for you. And then we included a number of different sheets, an afikoman scavenger hunt, different ways of telling the story, enhancing the meal part of the Seder, what's your Exodus story, and maybe to the question about how can you actually add things to sheets and how can you print them, maybe I'll start with copying sheets to make them your own. So here is a sheet, and because I'm logged in, again, you do need to be logged in for this, I can, and it's not my sheet. I'm clicking up here at the top where it says, what's your Exodus story? And I have a number of options here. I can share this sheet. So I think that's important. If you're prepping for the Seder and you have a co-leader or a co-parent or a co-family member who's equally in charge or helping you, here's the place where you can grab that link and share it with them. You can email it to them. You can chat it to them on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or however it is you share. And of course, you can also share these links out in different ways. So that's important. You can also make a copy of the sheet. And if I make a copy of the sheet, it will tell me that the sheet has been copied. And now I'll click here where it says view copy. And now you can see this one is my version. So I'll just say that, my version 2022. And now this sheet is editable. So I can go in and I can delete things. I can click enter and add something. This plus button will let me add things, including it will let me add text from within the site. So something that the original creator didn't think to add. It will let me add an image. I can upload anything from my computer, right? It's just giving me options from within my computer. Or I can add a link to a YouTube video. So I can have a video of my kids getting ready for Passover last year and upload that. I don't know that my children would appreciate that, but I could do that. Alternatively, I can just start typing or I can copy and paste. So to the question of how would I add and incorporate other resources, that's really the answer. Anything I could find online or anything that's on my hard drive or anything that exists in a book, but it's short enough that I don't feel bad about having to type it. Oh, if you do feel bad about having to type it, go ahead and take a picture of it with your phone and then just upload that image onto the source sheet. So those are the ways to adapt and change and create sheets. And I'm happy to take follow-up questions about that. And then the other question was about printing. So now that I'm on my own sheet, I'll click these three dots over here. And you can see I have the option to print. You can do that. You might not be thrilled with the results. It won't be beautifully formatted, but it will print. Or recommended, export it to Google Docs. And then on Google Docs, you can play with the formatting. So you can make it fit exactly the number of pages that you want it to fit. You do whatever it is that you want to do with that exactly. And you mentioned PDF. So that's also right from Google Docs. You could export it as a PDF. You could have it again as a Google Doc that you adapt over time. But Sefaria is really optimized for digital sharing and digital experiences. So if you do want to print it, then first of all, make sure all the resources in it are actually printable, right? The images, video, that might not print as well. You'll need to be careful about setting that up, but export to Google Docs, which is a feature built into Sefaria, is definitely the best and easiest way to print if you're concerned about formatting. But I would also consider, again, saving that on Sefaria and having that as a resource that you can go back to and adapt over time. Because really that's one of the great things about Sefaria is that you have those resources there, and then they're just kind of always there for you, and you can go back to them year after year without having to store them in your Passover box, which may or may not work well for you. So I'm happy to take follow-up questions about that. I'll just show a few more of the activities. Let's see, which one should we show? I'll show one more maybe, which is enhancing Shulchan Orech, which is maybe the part that least needs the enhancements because it's everybody's favorite part. It's when you eat. But if you want to give that part a little bit more substance and have some Seder themed things going along with the food, this is a really hands-on introduction to making a source sheet that you might use during the Seder, and some ideas of what might enhance the meal. So designing Passover centerpieces, for example, that you can keep on the table while you eat, creating a menu that tells the story of Passover. This is not an ambition that's good for me for this year, but maybe in the future. Games, jokes, riddles that you might use during the Passover Seder. Again, there's a huge amount of material on Sefaria, which is the good news, but also this sheet that Lauren shared in the chat and that I'm sharing from right now has kind of our top choices. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by the sheer number of sources on Sefaria and the sheer number of resources on Sefaria, I recommend this sheet as a great place to start. And I'm pausing to see if there are any questions and also to make sure I answered the question about source sheet making. Lauren, any questions come in? via chat so far? No. Anyone have a question?
Can I ask, you had said that you have to become sign in order to use this? Did I hear it wrong?
No, you heard
No.
that right. You can access all of the sources without signing in. But if you want to create on Sefaria, if you want to create a sheet or add notes or bookmark something, then you'll need to create a completely free account, which will take about 2 minutes to create.
And you go into Sefaria.com?
Sefaria.org.
.org. Okay, thank you.
Type that into the chat and you can also navigate there from the sheet that Lauren shared in the chat. Okay, any other questions before I turn it back over to Lauren? No, okay, take it away, Lauren.
Okay, just a couple other ideas and then welcome, some of the practices. Oh, go ahead. Somebody wants
Do
to
you
say
have some songs of Pesach available to reverse before the Seder?
You said, do we have any songs? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, so we can listen to it, and when you come time for Seder, we can sing it together.
Yeah, so we do. So we have the text of the songs, of course, that are in the Haggadah. We have it transliterated, so it should help you actually sing it. And also, you are able to, if you create a source sheet, if you create a sheet on Sefaria, which just means you need to have an account, which again is free, it takes just a couple minutes to sign up. Sefaria source sheets are very different from what might be a quote unquote traditional text source sheet, because you can put media on there. You can put images, as we've done, as we've shown. You can put audio. You can put YouTube links. So, for example, I'll just show an example. Let's have a little fun here, shall we? If I were to just let's see here. So we'll go to I'll get a Manish Chana verse from YouTube here. I'm going to make a source sheet. Just bear with me here. I want to show you what it could look like. Create new source sheet, right? Manish Chana. Okay. I'm going to put that here, right? Maybe I'll go to Haggadah, right? Haggadah. Oh, nope, we don't want that one, right? Remember, we want the one with the book. So I'll type in Haggadah. Here we go. We want Manish Tana. 4 questions, right? So what I can do is I'm going to take the text here. I'm going to highlight it. Oh, here we go. Just this one text, highlight it, click add to sheet. Right, there's our sheet that we created, Manish Chana. I know this is very fast, but we can share with you a recording of others that we've made. Right, I'll go to that particular sheet that we just made with the text. Here we are. Right, and I'm going to click the plus button, and I'm going to go to add media. I'm going to type in this YouTube link. I'm going to click add media, and then on this source sheet, which used to be just text, now we have an actual a video. I can click it. And then we have the song within a text source sheet. So something you can do is go to YouTube or some other platform, get the actual link to the song, and then put it on a source sheet. But we don't have the actual song in Sefaria, although that is a great suggestion and something that we can think about. Is that helpful, Oded?
Yeah, because I thought that you may have some small audio library that we can use for the holidays, especially for children, and they play the song before Pesach. So when Pesach comes, it will not be new for them, but kind of they already know the song.
Well, it is a good idea.
It was on sheets. Sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
No, go ahead, Sarah.
I realized, Lauren, that there's something that we forgot to say at the beginning that probably it was my job to say, which is that all of the sources that you're looking at on Sefaria are, they're all open to everybody for use and reuse. And that's not by accident, that's by design. That's something that we did very carefully in building Sefaria's library. So everything is available for your reuse as long as it's non-commercial. And that's different from other websites. So we can't actually create a library of songs because songs, artwork, those things are typically more tightly controlled. They're under tighter copyright. And it's not yet within our mission to try to release those into the Creative Commons. So we don't want to violate anybody's copyright. we don't want to steal from anybody. And so that's why our library doesn't yet contain a library of songs, except again, when they're put on to sheets, which you're welcome to do. And then you could have a resource, exactly as Lauren said, that would prepare children for the holiday in that way that you described.
Yeah, I think that kind of suggestion. If you have Lego, let the young children build the pyramids.
That's a great idea. It's a great activity one could do. So yeah, thank you, Odette. And I think just to remind you, this is something that you could do as a preparation tool if you have in the next 2 weeks or for future years, is to create a source sheet with maybe just the songs, for example, and maybe you'll get some YouTube recordings, some clips to put onto a source sheet if you need people to prepare ahead of time. So, and just so you know, Odette and others here, we do have some audio. This isn't related specifically to Pesach, to Passover, but if you go to the parasha, for example, next week, Metzorah, any verse in Chumash, in the side, in the resource panel, we have Torah readings, and you can click play.
Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. So
for every verse in the Chumash for parasha, you're able to actually get the audio recording. That's the extent right now of our audio recordings. A few ideas I want to share for how you might be able to use Sefaria at your Seder. One is, and this is something I do in my own life, is to print out a bunch of sort of short clips or sources and distribute them around the table. So what you could do, for example, is to create one source sheet like we did here with the Manishtana, right? And go through the things that we've already done. Maybe you go to the Freedom topic page or Miriam topic page, and you'll find a text that you like. Oh, what does it mean to be free? This is interesting, right? It is to me that this is from Leviticus. It's to me that the Israelites are servants. They are my servants whom I freed from the land of Egypt. So what does it mean to be both free and to be a servant? Like, how does that work? So maybe I would take this text, I could bookmark it, right, as we saw before, or I could go into that text and I could add it to a sheet, right? And I can do that with a bunch of texts, either one theme or multiple themes. Texts I think are interesting. I could print that source sheet out and then cut the different texts out into little blocks, and I can put them on everyone's, a different one on each person's table. Maybe I know, and you could, of course, tailor it to the individual who's at your table if you know them well. So then you can actually have all these texts you've compiled, you've cut out, you've put onto people's plates, and then you can invite people at different points in the Seder to talk about that text, to raise that as a conversation. So that's something you could do using a sheet, using text on Sefaria, using sheets on Sefaria. Another thing you can do, and this is related to what Sarah said earlier, is topics-driven learning in real time if you want. If this is your practice. So for example, maybe you want to know about, my grandfather would always start the Seder and ask, what does freedom mean? And then we would talk for like 2 hours before we even started. And then we probably skipped the whole Haggadah and went straight to dinner because we didn't have any time. But you could, what does freedom mean? Well, maybe everybody, again, if this is your practice and you can do this ahead of time, right? You could have people prepare this ahead of time. Maybe you'll go freedom, right? And we're going to go to freedom again, right? And you'll just click the hashtag freedom, and then everybody will pick a text that speaks to them, that reflects how they understand freedom. And if it's not there, then they can come up with a new idea. And then one other idea, again, using Sefaria, just as one example, is for children's learning. So again, this is on the sheet itself here. For children, different understandings, different ways to learn. So you could actually print out this source sheet and use it as an activity if you wanted, right? And on this is our different pictures of the 4 children that we've taken from the manuscripts that we saw earlier, right? If you go to the 4 children, you go to the resource panel, you go to manuscripts, you'll see all those. Here's just a selection of a few of them. Here's the one from the Shik Haggadah. Here's a different one, right? And each one has different questions on that particular one. How do you interpret the different children? This one happens to be my favorite, by an artist. He's still alive. He lives in New York. He teaches sometimes at SAR High School. But David Wander, this is his 4 children. So which one is which? We might want to discuss. Well, is this which one's the wise child? Which is the wicked? Which is the simple? Which one doesn't know how to ask? And I actually did this as a real activity actually in jail with folks inside. And I said, and we had a very lively, it was almost like a fight a fight in jail, debating which child is which. And you might have thought that the one on fire is the evil child, right? The one who wants to burn the book. But then someone said, well, wait on, like, the Torah is like a fire. So maybe this is actually a book of Torah. Or maybe we don't even know what's in this book. We don't know what this book says. So maybe this is actually a heroic child who's burning the book, which is a very dangerous book. There are many different interpretations, one could have for which child is which. So you could actually use the pictures. You can use these pictures and interpret which child is which. And again, all these pictures, they are on Sefaria. You can connect to them by going to the Haggadah, going to the 4 children, going to the resource panel, and seeing all those under the manuscript. So those are some ideas. Sarah, would you like to add anything, or do you want to open the floor?
No, I feel like we covered a lot really quickly. So I think we'll use our remaining few minutes to see if there are any questions or comments, or if you want us to repeat anything or add any more links to the chat.
I have some questions, again, taking all the time. Can I download PDF files so I can use my reader, so I can hear it in nice speaking, so I don't have to be tied to the screen?
Yes, you can download texts as in different formats. So text from within Sefaria's library can be downloaded. Here, I'll show that. Oops. And if you want to download a sheet, so then, as was mentioned earlier, I would export it to Google Docs, as I shared earlier. But I'll just show you, because our texts are open for use and reuse, you can go into any text. I'll pick this one about Miriam, and you could actually, on the table of contents page, this is where it is. You would be able to, about this text. Yeah, the different versions, you can actually download the text. You can pick which version you want. And so I could pick it in any of these languages, and you can select the format in which you want to download it. And you can get it in text, then you can export it as a PDF, and then you would have it on your computer if you want to be able to use it and print it. I think probably if you're thinking about the Haggadah, probably your best bet is to make a sheet and then export it as a Google Doc. And you can also then turn it into a PDF or just print it from Google Docs. I don't know if you need like the whole book of Exodus. You might just want to pick excerpts, but those are some options. Great question. Yeah, any others?
Hebrew text, and I want to download it as a PDF so I can hear it, not read it.
So again, you can't, we don't have audio in
Not
that.
audio, but a PDF, so I can use my reader so I can read me loud.
Oh, so it can read it to you. Yeah, so you would just export, once it's a Google Doc, you can export it as a PDF.
You can export in PDF?
From Google Docs, yeah. Yeah, it's just a setting on Google Docs. You can download it as let's see, when was the last time I did this? You could download it as a Word file, you could download it as a PDF. And yes, then a reader would read it to you.
Thank you.
Sorry, misunderstood that at first. Any other questions? Bekasha, any other questions?
I know I'm sort of repeating myself. I just want to make sure. So if I click on the plus sign and then I say I have a PDF of something else external to Sefaria, and I want to take some words from that and just have it be in the flow of the Haggadah, can I paste those in at that point?
That is sadly not a Sefaria question. One of the reasons that we don't love PDFs at Sefaria is because PDFs are often not fully digitized, and I can't tell you without seeing your PDF whether it's copy and paste from. So sometimes you can copy and paste from PDF, sometimes you can't, but that's not a Sefaria.
Right.
Anything that is copy and pastable could be copied and pasted into a Sefaria sheet.
Okay.
Just a question of like a particular PDF that you have.
Right. Yeah, I know. I just want to make sure there's a mechanism.
Yes, exactly.
The plus sign, and then it's neither an image nor a.
Sorry, actually, you wouldn't. Let me share my screen again. You wouldn't even need the plus sign in order to put it. The plus sign is if you want to add
one of those three.
Here's my
Yeah.
sheet, right? Yeah, here's my sheet. So the plus sign lets me add, again, a text from Sefaria or an image or media, but
Okay.
anything else I actually can just type. So here's me
Okay.
typing, right? And
Okay.
there would be no difference if I wanted to copy and
Paste
paste
it.
there.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and then I can format it however I want. So the source sheet builder is really flexible in that way and really designed to have you blend
Mhm.
classic texts, texts that other people put on Sefaria, things that you've had on your hard drive for a million years. And again, what I would say is if you have a print book that you love, but you just want like a section of it, take a picture of it with your phone and just upload it as media. They'll save you this typing time, and we'll let you hold on to that snippet, in this digital format.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
I'd like to offer a comment, not a question.
Simcha,
I
sure.
My personal feeling is that you guys have, it's the first I know of this, and you guys have done a wonderful, wonderful thing here. I don't necessarily think it's the most advantageous for alta kakas like me, but more so, I think for if you were to offer this to high school students to teach them how to use such material, they would become the Seder leaders of the future.
I'm glad you think so.
opinion.
I think you're right. I mentioned earlier that the youngest children we know of who use Sefaria with some amount of independence are in around third grade, right? You have to be able to read and you have to be able to click. But I think you're 100% right that at my advanced age, my children are much more adept with digital materials than I am. And certainly, my 5-year-old, my not yet 5-year-old does not yet read, so he's not a Sefaria user, but my 10-year-old is a very fluent Sefaria user. And it's really amazing to see. And I think you're right. I think it really empowers kids to lead and to feel that they can navigate and get sources. So I really appreciate that comment. So thank you for sharing that. And there was a question in the chat, but Lauren answered it. Any other questions or comments? We love comments too. Okay, wonderful. We are very much here for you if you need anything in the lead up to the Seder. Best email address for fastest response is hello@sefaria.org. We'll put that in the chat as well. Hello@sefaria.org will get you a pretty quick answer within about a day. And you can ask us all your feature questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? If you forget how to do something that we told you how to do on this webinar, first of all, you're going to receive a recording of this webinar. But second of all, you're always welcome to reach out to us. We're really happy to help. Other emails that we'll happily accept are your suggestions for more text that we should add, your thoughts about features. And please, please, if you create a Haggadah, if you create a sheet, if you create an activity on Sefaria, please share it with us and let us know how it went. We would really love to hear about that. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. Lauren, I'll give you the last word.
Oh, thank you all. I hope you've all left with some answers. I hope you all have some questions as well. I know we've done a lot, especially if you're new to Sefaria, you probably have way more questions than you thought imaginable. That is in the spirit of Pesach. Know that we are putting together a number of webinars, Sefaria 101, which even as an expert user, many of us still learn a lot through the 101s. We're going to have deep dive into the library, how to create source sheets. So just stay tuned for more trainings. And also, if you look on Sefaria in our help center, which we will link in the source sheet itself, you'll see many past recordings as well. If you have 30 minutes or an hour to sit and watch a recording, you'll learn more than you ever thought about Sefaria. And as Sarah said, if you have any questions, please email us hello @sefaria.org, and we generally respond to messages within 24 to 48 hours. We read every email you send, so please reach out.
Thank you, everyone. Shavua Tov. Have a great week, and Chag Sameach. Happy Passover.
Thank you. It was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.